I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine. I just got to be aggressive.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at the 6 games from Thursday, previewing the 7 games for Friday, including the season debut of DeMarcus Cousins. Michael Bolton, are you pumped for Boogie's return?
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Let's start where we always do on these shows.
Monstrous line of the night.
The monstrous line of the night goes to Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. Embiid was dealing with a sore back, but that didn't really stop him. 22, 13, and 8 with 2 triples, 1 steal, and 3 blocks. He was 9 of 19 from the field, and he hit both of his free throws. Embiid continues to be fantastic this year, the 9th overall ranked player for the season, averaging 27 and 13 with 2 blocks. No reason he can't keep up those sort of numbers for the rest of the season. He's played 43 games as well. He's only sat out 3 games all season. No back-to-back restrictions, no minute restrictions. I'm a little bit worried about this back that was clearly bothering him today, and I think there might be a couple of games off coming up in the near future for Embiid. So I'm a little bit cautious with that, but otherwise Embiid has been clearly fantastic and will continue to be fantastic for the majority of this season.
Waiver wire line of the night.
The waiver wire line of the night goes to the Cornetto, Luke Cornett of the New York Knicks. He started with Enes Kanter out, which it makes sense, although the game prior to this, Enes Kanter was also out and Cornett came off the bench. So again, working out what Fizdale's doing makes no sense. He played 34 minutes, had 16 points with 4 triples, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 5 steals with 1 block. Now, those steal numbers are a little bit fluky here for the Cornetto. I don't fully know what to understand with his playing time. So the first game that he started, it's like a perfect bell curve, his minutes. When he started back on the 27th of December, he played 34 minutes. Then 20, it's like an inverse bell curve maybe, that's better. 34 minutes, then 29, then 27, then 21, then 19, then 19, then 21, then 34, then 34. So is there a pattern there? Are we just going to have? Is this going to be a legitimate roller coaster in terms of a graph of his minutes? What happens next game when Kanter's back and Mitchell Robinson's there? Will Cornett continue to start? Will he play 30 plus minutes? I just have no idea what Fizdale is going to do on a regular basis because he has no consistency in anything that he does. Cornett is probably more of a, say, 16-team league grab at this point. In 14 teamers, I could make that understandable decision. I just don't know how things are going to go with this rotation. And yeah, introducing maybe 18 minutes of Enes Kanter, maybe 26 minutes of Enes Kanter back into the mix, could really screw a lot of this up for Cornett. So while it's a strong line, fueled by unsustainably high steals, it could all very easily come tumbling down in the next game once Fizdale's got 3 centers to screw up in the rotation. The deep leaguer of the night went to Terrence Ferguson of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Ferguson has done this a couple of times in his career, played 37 minutes in the overtime loss, had 21 points with 6 triples, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal. He's had a couple of multi-3 games of late. In fact, just a week ago against the Spurs, he knocked in 21 points, which included 7 triples. Last season, I believe it was also against the Lakers. I probably should look that up and have a look. Yes, it was. In his first NBA start, he knocked in 6 triples as well in LA for 24 points. So maybe that's a little bit of a theme that we can remember for DFS for Fergo, that when he plays against the Lakers, his 3-point shooting becomes solid. But this is a guy who provides absolutely nothing for fantasy. He has started all season, and he's the 335th ranked player, meaning even in a 30-team league, you'd be pretty hard-pressed to have him as a must-roster guy. Although, to be fair to him, over the last month, he's climbed back inside the top 300, and over the last 2 weeks, he's inside the top 170. So what's different there? Well, he's shooting 54% from 3 and 50% overall from the field and banging in 2.5 threes per game. But we've seen his minutes climb, so he's maybe becoming an option for 20-team leagues, maybe 18-team leagues. But he's a player who does absolutely the least with the most, probably the king of that category in the NBA at the moment. Let's move on to the next one.
Young Gun of the Night.
The young gun of the night goes to the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma of the Los Angeles Lakers. 32 points with 7 triples, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. He had a monster usage, 28%, 55% shooting, hit all of his free throws. This is just absolutely screaming out to me that he is a sell high guy. Now, his numbers fluctuate wildly. Before this game, over the last 2 weeks, he was the 225th ranked player because he just couldn't hit shots on such large volume. He'd got no blocks, no steals, no assists barely, and just wasn't doing anything. And then he comes out and puts up a performance like this. So over the course of the season, he's barely a top 100 guy. I think that's about the level he settles in for the rest of this season. But if you can extract a top 70 type of player back in exchange for Kuzma before LeBron returns, I would absolutely be doing that, no worries. Now, I like his fit with LeBron. He just isn't going to be able to maintain a usage of 30%, which is what he's been having over the last 2 weeks. He's just not going to be able to do that. And so much of his game is predicated on having high volume scoring because he does nothing in those other areas. And you can argue about this as much as you want, and that's fine. I'm happy to listen to alternative thoughts on things. But his value is so packed in tightly to having high usage and scoring points that when LeBron comes back, that's going to dip naturally, and it's going to cost him some value. So I think getting a top 70 guy back for Kuzma would absolutely be my aim if I had him at this point in the season.
I tell a man's not hot.
Oh, the dud of the night goes to Chris Dunn of the Chicago Bulls. This was just putrid from the Bulls organization as a whole. That's pretty much their modus operandi at this point. 30 minutes for Dunn, 6 points, 1 rebound, and 3 assists on 3 of 8 shooting. No threes, no steals, no blocks, no free throw attempts at all. This was just disgusting. Dunn has been relatively solid. I thought he could crack himself into the top 50 this season. He hasn't been able to do that because his steal rate has suffered a big drop, down from 2.5 steals per 36 down to 1.6. And I say this all the time come draft time, is that steals are such a wildly fluctuating number and they have such a huge impact on players' ranks overall. And if you drop from a high steal rate, Victor Oladipo, Bud Hield, these are two guys who put up huge steal rates last season. Now, Hield's rankings have been improved because of improvements in other areas, but Oladipo, those steals drop down, man, you plummet in the rankings, and that's happening to Dunn at the moment, who was the 52nd ranked player last season and has been unable to capture that again this year, despite shooting a significantly better percentage from the field, 46% from the field. He's still a must-roster player. This was just a turd. I don't believe in Dunn long-term as a player. I think he's in a situation where, for a couple of years, he can be that top 70, top 50 type of point guard, but long-term, I don't think he is a starting caliber point guard in the NBA, and games like this, I guess, just give me confidence to say that even more. The best net ratings, the GOATs of the day, Mason Plumlee was a plus 103.4, helps when you play the Bulls, and the worst net rating was a member of those Chicago Bulls, and that was Wayne Selden, who was a negative 98.2. Not much to talk about with those guys, except Plumlee seems to be continuing to cut into Paul Millsap's minutes. In all those previous games, that was a factor. Today, I don't know, was it the fact that they got their ass kicked, the Bulls, that Plumlee could get some of those extra minutes and Millsap was limited to 25, but it is absolutely something to watch, and Plumlee has that moderate-sized league, 14-16 team league value with a marginally more elevated role than we may expect. Injury news, it was a pretty clean day today. No real injury news came out, so that's always fantastic for us in a fantasy perspective that we don't have to talk about players getting hurt. Let's have a look at these games now in a little bit more detail across the NBA. As I said, there were 6 of them on. The first one of those was the London game. The Knicks lost to the Wizards 101-100. Manny Mudiay had 25 points on huge 61% shooting. No steals, no blocks, 2 assists. He's a better points league guy than categories guy, but I do think he is a pretty strong, a strong-ish 12-team league guy, but he's a must-roster 12-team points guy. Tim Hardaway was back after that one-game absence, but as has been the case with him recently, the minutes are really reduced. 25 minutes for 8 points and 2 triples. He's not a drop. In an 8-team league, is a drop. In a 10-team, he's pretty close. In a 12, I'd hold on, but it hasn't been great. The Fort, Kevin Knox, was putrid. 5 points on 11 shots. That's 18%. 4 rebounds. Not a good game from him. I think he's still okay as a 12-team league guy in certain circumstances, but his limitations are pretty clear. Hazonia was scoreless in 20 minutes, but at least he got those 20 minutes. He's not quite into that 12-team discussion yet, while Damo Dotson and Alonzo Trier both scored 13 points, taking on some of that extra role from Hardaway, but of course, no reliability there. I'd been giving a pass to Noel Vonleh, who'd been under 20 minutes in 3 of the previous 4 games because of foul trouble. Today, no foul trouble, under 25. Still had 13 and 10. Didn't block any shots. The free throws were off in this game. I really think that he is a poor man's Derek Favors type of a player who is better suited to 14-team league fantasy situations. The Wizards, Satoransky, 14-2-5, 2 steals and a block. I don't know why he's available in 40% of Yahoo leagues. You need to make sure he is not on the waiver wire in your league. Beal had 26 and 9, while Porter continuing to thrive in this bench role and high usage role, 20 and 11 with 2 steals. I've been mentioning this for a while. I think that we could see him continue to come off the bench, but you don't care as long as the usage is up and the minutes are up, and both those things are true. A little bit curious, the use of Thomas Bryant in this game. 16 minutes for Bryant, 10 and 9 with a block, and it wasn't because they were giving the minutes to Jeff Green, and it wasn't because they were giving the minutes to Yeonmi Hinmi. It was Porter and Sam Decker who were playing center, and that worked for the Wizards. I thought this was a game for Bryant to push to 28 or 29 minutes. Not so. When Markieff Morris returns and when Dwight Howard returns, Bryant's going to have no value. I'm pretty sure he's going to have no value, because if we can't give him more than 16 minutes in a matchup against the Cornetto, then I don't see how we're getting 25 minutes a night when everybody's healthy. So if you wanted to move on from Bryant for a hot free agent, I think that now would be probably the time that we'd consider doing it. I talked about Trevor Ariza in the Fast Break podcast, talking about the Wizards, about how he would shoot after he'd shot 50% in each of the last 2 games. He proved me right, saying he wouldn't continue that. He shot 27% here. The 7 rebounds and 7 assists are really nice from Ariza, but that field goal percentage is going to continue to be an issue. Well, Jeff Green, just the 21 minutes for Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
3 points and 3 rebounds. His little run as a 12-team league guy is cooked. Let's move on to the next one. We've got the Sacramento Kings getting smashed by the Charlotte Hornets, 114-95. Budrick Hield had 24 with 6 triples and had those 2 steals, while Darren Fox, 31 minutes, 10, 5, and 8, a steal and a block. And this is going under the radar a bit, but recently, over the last 2-3 weeks maybe, we are seeing Fox lose minutes to Yogi Ferrell. Now, I'm not saying it's because Fox is playing poorly, but the fact is, at the start of the year, Fox was getting 34, 35 minutes continuously, and now he's like 30, 31 minutes, and that doesn't seem like a huge amount. It does fly under the radar, but 3 minutes is 10% of your overall value, using rough, poor calculations, maybe 9% of your overall value in terms of playing time, and it's impacting what he's doing. He's at 31 minutes now over the last 2 months, and he started the season playing a big chunk of minutes, 38 in the opener, 42, 37, lots of upper 30s games. Whereas he hasn't gotten over 32 minutes since New Year's Day, where he had 38 minutes against the Blazers. Since then, 29, 31, 23, 31, 24, 31, 31, 31. So that's interesting, just looking at that with Fox. Not saying he's a drop or anything like that, but that's going to put a little bit of a block on his value, I think. Marvin Bagley, 15 and 8 in 23 minutes. I think it's fine to add him in 12-team leagues now. Bielitz is a clear 12 and 14-team league drop, while Justin Jackson, why did I even mention him? Let's talk Harry Giles instead. 1, 4, and 4 for Gilesy. 0 of 3. He is a long way from being a 12-team league guy. It could come. I just don't see it happening this season. Oh, and the Hornets, Bismack Biyombo started, played only 9 minutes. James Borrego is very quickly veering into Fizdale rotation territory. There's no consistency with the reserves. The main guys do get consistent run, but I don't know why Biyombo played only 9 minutes here and Bill Hernan-Gomez played 26. Now, Billy had a triple one. He had 11 points and 16 rebounds, and we know if he plays 25 minutes a night, he's a must-roster player. Do you have confidence that he's going to be a 25-minute-a-night guy until Cody Zeller comes back? Because I sure as shit don't. I don't see this being an every night thing. This came out of nowhere. It was great, but I'm not rushing to go grab him based on this. Walker had 23 points. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist dropped in 13 in the first half and then 2 in the second half, while Lamb, it wasn't a great Jeremy Lamb game, 14 points, and Miles Bridges chipped in with 15 of his own with a relatively empty stat line, and Batum continued his struggles, still probably just a waiver wire player. Let's go on to the next one. It's the Philadelphia 76ers. They blew out the Indiana Pacers 120-96. Jim Butler had 27, 5, and 8 with 3 steals, and JJ Redick hit 6 triples for 20 points and 5 assists. Big minutes for Redick of late. That could come down at some point, but he's playing well. Simmons had 11, 8, and 8 with a steal and a block there as well, while Baby Neck Wilson Chandler chipped in with 10 points, and he is probably just that 16-team league guy. Overall, a pretty uninspiring Sixers box score in terms of where values changed or anything along those lines. Interestingly, Furkan Korkmaz is only the 1 minute in garbage time as the Sixers ran a pretty tight 9-man rotation. On the Pacers, Miles Turner 8 and 12 with 3 steals and 3 blocks. His return has really hurt Domantas Sabonis, who only played 22 minutes here, 6 and 8. He's not a drop by any means, Sabonis, but it's worth monitoring. While Thad Young had a really strong game, 27 points on 16 attempts. That usage is unsustainable from Thad, as is that level of shooting. Collison is an assists streamer, and Oladipo, the struggles continue. 15 points with 7 assists on 30% shooting. This is buy low time for Victor Oladipo. People are panicking, they are pissed, and rightfully so. He was never, in my opinion, going to live up to what he did last season. I had absolutely no idea that he would be this bad. I had him as a mid to late second round guy, not a 4th or 5th round guy where he currently resides. But this level of shooting, and you have to think the knee is still bothering him, as much as he wants to protest that it's not, this level of shooting won't continue. And I heard people saying that they've been trying to trade him away for Buddy Hield or for Otto Porter. And if I've got Buddy Hield and if I've got Otto Porter, I am throwing them headfirst like a bloody javelin straight at whoever has Victor Oladipo to make that switch. That's how I would prove it. But you can see that if those trades are getting turned down, if you've got those guys and players of that ilk, that's a move that I make, because I'm pretty sure he's going to get better from where he is now. Bojan Bogdanovic struggled. I don't really see him as a must-roster 12-team league guy. Let's go on to the next one. The Phoenix Suns and the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors get the victory at the end, 111-109. DeAndre Ayton was huge here, 15 and 17, and brought the defense. 2 steals and 2 blocks, 75 from the field and from the line. This is what he can become. I'm not saying he's going to do it every night, but this was strong. He also just barely took any shots, which is disappointing. I don't think he had a single field goal attempt in the second half, which is a disappointment from a Phoenix perspective. But it's also why I struggle with Richaun Holmes as a 12-team league guy. Just 13 minutes for Holmesy, 3 points and a block. The thing that had been really sustaining him was a completely unsustainable, in my opinion, field goal percentage, block rate, and free throw percentage. In this game, he couldn't hit his shots, much like he's been through most of his career, and then the minutes are well down. And I find it hard to have a must-roster guy getting 17, 18 minutes a night. And this is the problem with Holmes, in my opinion, and I know his recent form has necessitated the play, but I just don't see it being a consistent thing. I think TJ Warren's a bit of a sell high. 41 minutes here, 11 and 6, 2 steals and 2 blocks. Shot poorly. If you can get a top 70 guy back for Warren, I'd do it. I think his role is going to change dramatically as the season goes on. McCall Bridges, whose minutes dropped when Devin Booker went out, have bumped back up in a weird counterintuitive thought process. The offense here is good, but it's or maybe it's this.
A surprise, to be sure, but it worked.
You're not going to be able to count on him for 15 points, but the 4 assists and a block are nice. Well, Booker had 30 points, 8 assists, and 4 triples. And Oubre is coming into 12-team discussion now, 18 and 9 in 30 minutes. He's kicked Josh Jackson to the curb pretty clearly. The shooting was a disaster here from Oubre. What a weird line this is. He was 3 of 15 from the field for 20%, but got to the line 13 times and hit 11 of them. We know he's never going to get assists. He's poor at rebounds, steals, and blocks, but he had 18 and 9 here, and the line overall was pretty good. D'Anthony Melton, only 16 minutes. Foul trouble did limit him, but he still got 2 assists, he still got a steal, and he still got a block, providing those defensive numbers. This question gets asked to me all the time. Who would you rather have? Bridges, Melton, Jackson, and Oubre? I get that question. Rank these guys, and you know how much I abhor ranking. But in general, I would have Melton as the number 1 guy there. I'd probably have Oubre and Bridges neck and neck, and then Jackson a pretty distant 4th. For the Raptors, Kawhi Leonard was out resting in this game. Kyle Lowry was also out resting until they said no, he's actually going to play. He changed his mind and came in and played, and they got the victory just by the 2 points. So probably lucky he did play. 40 minutes for Lowry, 16, 9, and 8 with 2 steals. And with Leonard out, we had Fred VanVleet start, 15 points and 4 assists. When everyone's healthy, he's not a 12-team league guy. One guy goes down, and he is. Siakam bounced back with 10, 12, and 5 with a steal and 2 blocks. A really, really nice line. And with both Kawhi and the Jedi sidelined,
Hello there.
we had CJ Miles chip in for 13 points with 3 triples. Now, just a quick note on Anunoby, who did miss this game for personal issues. His dynasty, I don't want to sound crass here or anything like that, but his dynasty value has taken a big hit this season. I think he is a massive, massive buy low dynasty guy. His father died at the end of September, and he is still taking personal days off. Now, I don't know if these recent personal days off are still to do with his father, but losing your father 2 weeks before the season started has got to have an effect on him, and it clearly is. And I am conflating. I don't know if conflating is the right word here. It probably isn't. I am looking at these personal days off now and thinking that it is still impacting him. And some of his poor on-court play, I am certain, is to do with the passing of his father. So, I think he's much better than what he's showing at the moment, and I think that that's a massive part of it. And I think that's worth exploring in a dynasty format. The next game we take a look at is those Chicago... I can't even speak about this team. They're so disgusting. The Chicago Bulls, they got pummeled.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah. 135, 105. Zach LaVine, since he came back from that ankle injury, he has been terrible. Selling high on him would have been awesome before that injury. 8, 5, and 6. The percentages, which I never thought were going to be able to stick at that sort of a level, they were pretty disgusting here. There was no Wendell Carter, so Punch Bob Shiploke started at center. He is just not good. It's as simple as that. And he did his usual thing. He feasted in garbage time. The game was over, and he grabbed, I think, 3 boards and had 4 points in the last 2 minutes when the game was over to finish with 10 and 13. I don't think he's a 12-team league guy. He can't shoot. He can't defend. He just isn't good at all. And with Carter's injury now not a long-term thing, I don't think you should add him. Jabari had 15 in 18 minutes, but still getting only 18 minutes with Carter out is a little bit of a concern, and that's still probably more of a 14 or 16-team league guy more accurately. A lot of people saying, should I stash Jabari waiting for a trade? My thing is, what situation is he going to where he's coming in and playing 30 minutes a night where he's going to be of value? And that's what you got to think. Who's giving up $20 million he costs for salary? So who's giving up that sort of salary to get him? They have either no control over him for next season, or they do, and they have to pay him $20 million, meaning they have no control of him because they'll just decline that team option. Who's paying that to put him in a 30-minute role? And you can free Jabari as much as you want. I just don't see that situation arising. With Carter out, Robin Lopez played 19 minutes back in the rotation, 17 and 6. That's good. It's also not sustainable. And Markkanen 27 and 10. A pretty strong game from Lowry, actually, after struggling in the last one. Changed to the bench rotation for the guards. Archer Jacquino and Shaq Harrison had their minutes limited.
Big Shaq.
And that meant that we got more Wayne Selden, who played 25 minutes and went scoreless and did add 4 assists. And this team, the front office, the whole thing is an absolute disaster, and they should go. And I said the other day that they should be relegated to the NBL, and someone was like, Josh, how dare you disrespect the NBL? They're trying as hard as they can. I'm not disrespecting them, but let's be honest, the NBA is a level above the NBL. I'm not trying to disrespect the NBL at all, and I apologize if anyone from the NBL has listened to this and felt like it was a disrespect. But let's be honest, the NBA is at a higher level than the NBL. Simple as that. For the Nuggets, Jokic, 18, 8, and 11, a steal and a block. He could have done this with his arms tied behind his back against this team. While the Blue Arrow dropped in 23 points in a quarter, ended up with 25 points, 7 triples, and 5 assists. Did old Jamal Murray. Torrey Craig continues to play well. 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 triples. He had that starting role with Fart and Will Barton out for personal reasons, while Malik Beasley had 13 and 9. He continued to start. The minutes are going to come down for him. He's really just a short-term stream guy. Gaz Harris was back. Yep, 19 minutes for Harris, 14 points, 2 assists. It's just great to have him back. Of course, if he's on the waiver wire, you go and add him after this, but it's just good to have him back out there. While Millsap, 14 and 8 in those 25 minutes. I've talked about my concerns with him a little bit, about him getting back to 30 minutes a night. I'm just not sure he's going to get there. The last game of the night was an overtime victory for the Lakers, 138-128. Josh the Hitman Hart played well off the bench, 12, 10, and 5 with 3 steals and a block. He closed the regulation over KCP. Strong from him. He's erratic in the production, no doubt about that. When LeBron comes back, he'll have very, very little to no value at all, so not really an add there. But the question that everybody's asking me here is, if it's the Zubats, Josh, you love him, what's he doing here? Well, he was fantastic. 26 and 12, and he should be playing over Tyson Chandler. He probably should be playing over JaVale McGee, but I don't know that will be the case. We had Chandler start again and play 16 minutes, and JaVale played only 9 minutes. Now, I think that JaVale fits much better when LeBron's there, and that could change things around. But if you've got that streaming spot, add Zubats, because on a per-minute basis, he's a significantly better fantasy player than Tyson Chandler. He's probably close to where JaVale is. JaVale's a pretty good per-minute fantasy guy as well. But there is definitely some intrigue there, because he's impressed almost every game he has. had played, but then he had that stretch where he played, and then Walton took him out of the rotation entirely. So, it comes down to what trust does Walton and the coaching staff have in what Zubats can do. Hopefully this increased their trust, but I'm not certain that it's going to be 28 minutes a night here on out for Zubats. In fact, I'm pretty confident that won't be the case. Ingram was bad, 8 points on 1 of 9 shooting, that's gross. The 11 assists is nice, the block is nice. He's still a 12-team league guy, but when LeBron comes back, don't be shocked if he is a guy that gets dropped to the waiver wire, especially in 10-teamers. For the Thunder, George had 27, 7, and 8. That's great. Steven Adams, 17 and 15 with 4 steals. That's great. Westbrook had 26, 9, and 13. Also great. A steal, a block. Also great. 5 triples. Also great. 7 of 30 from the field is it's unforgivably bad. It is so bad. And then 7 of 10 from the line. To give credit to Westbrook, he did hit the 3 free throws at the end when he was fouled by Lonzo to put the game to overtime. But man, that is just piss poor. Jeremy Grant was strong, 14 points with 3 blocks and 2 triples, and we know that he is a must roster. Nerlens Noel returned from his concussion, so that's great to have him back out there, and he should resume his place as one of the elite defensive streamers without being a must roster guy. And I reckon that'll just about cover it for this Thunder team. All right, let us transfer ourselves over to talk some DFS now. We will start by looking at the perfect lineups. Of course, we start that by looking at DraftKings, Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart, Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, DeAndre Ayton, Jim Butler, the future MVP Kyle Kuzma and his teammate Ivica Zubats gave us a total of 371.5 for a total of 49,900. And then on FanDuel we had Tone Parker, Russ Westbrook, Jim Butler, Josh Hart, McCall Bridges, Paul George, Luke Cornett, Kuzma and Bill Hernan-Gomez for a total of 389.8, and that cost $59,600 dues. Alright guys, let's take a look at DFS action for Friday now. A very lean Friday with only 7 games on. We're going to be focusing more on DraftKings pricing for today. The first game we look at, the Brooklyn Nets and the Orlando Magic in Orlando. The Nets are favoured by just the solitary point, and the total here is 216 points. The Nets, they're pushing that they want this win to keep themselves in that playoff mix after that big win against Houston the other day. The blue swimmer Alan Crabb and Jared Dudley still remain out for Brooklyn. For the point guards, D'Angelo Russell, 7,300. Prior to last game, he'd been putting up pretty strong numbers, but last game was a little bit of a disappointment. He is quite up and down. He's got the ability to clearly smash through this value mark, but also the floor is not that solid for D'Angelo. So I like him as a tournament guy. That's about it. Dinwiddie, on the other hand, was massive against Houston, but prior to that, he'd been really poor. He had 52 against Houston, but over his last 5, he's only averaging half of that, meaning all those other 4 games must have been considerably lower. So at 5,700, more just a tournament guy, but I'd rather have D'Angelo unless I can't fit him into the salary cap. DJ Augustin, Isaiah Briscoe, I'm not really looking at those guys too closely. At shooting guard, Smokin' Joe Harris is at 4,900. He also had a pretty strong game against Houston. I don't mind that as a cash play, a decent enough floor, but there are better options out there. While Fournier comes in better priced than some of the other sides. He's at 5,500 now. He's got a fantastic record against Brooklyn, like he did against Detroit, and that paid off there, averaging 37 the last 3 times out against Brooklyn. He's at 5,500. I don't dislike him, but I think there are better options. While the 5,400 you have to pay for Terry Ross. Well, at the moment, he's smashing through that. Consistency has always been a problem with Ross, but with the way that they are not playing John Simmons at all, Ross pushes up into that consistent 30 minutes a night, and I think he's worth looking at 5,400. Johnny Isaac is down at 3,700. A lot of minutes for Isaac of late. It's not really translating into big numbers, but he could have a 26, 27 point upside, making him a tournament type guy. Aaron Gordon at 64 I like quite a lot, especially given the Nets and the way that power forwards can have some pretty big games against them. You got Rowdy Rodion's Kuruks at 4,300. I don't see the value there, while Damari Carroll had a big one last time out. He's at 5,100. He dropped 32 against Houston. I just worry about what they're going to do with the minutes with Hollis Jefferson, who played just 7 minutes against Houston, how that will impact Damari. So probably not a strong play here. Trevion Graham also had a big game against Houston. 28 points at 3,600 looks great, but is he going to be a guy that continues to start? Where will his minutes go? There's a lot of uncertainty there. For the big men, Nick Vucevic, I love Nick at 9,400 here. We've seen this big man all throughout the season have big games against Brooklyn, and Vucevic has been fantastic in his own right, so he could be looking at 50-plus points here. Jarrett Allen, also huge games the last 2. In fact, he's averaging 46 in his last 3. They're giving him more minutes, and he's paying them back for that sort of faith. 6,100 for Allen. I do like it here. Ed Davis, not going to lie, I'm not a massive fan of that, nor with Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Over on FanDuel, Vooch at 9,500 looks pretty good. Johnny Isaac maybe, but probably not. I think D'Angelo at 77 comes in pretty good, as does Aaron Gordon at 72. A little bit of value with both of those guys over on FanDuel. Let's take a look at the next game. We've got the Miami Heat and the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are favored by 2, and the total is 207.5. It's a low total in this game, but it's a good opportunity for Hassan Whiteside, I think, and a good opportunity for Andre Drummond, who's always done well against Miami, to post some big lines here. A few of the Pistons guys are listed as probable. Stan Johnson, Ish Smith, Kyrie Thomas, they're all probable. Henry Allenson is questionable. He wouldn't play regardless, while Tyler Johnson is questionable in Miami. And if Johnson is out, I think Waiters gets the bump, but the guy I'd really be looking at is Derek Jones Jr. with that ability to put up those defensive stats. If he can go from 18 minutes to 25 minutes, he could really come into play as an option. For the point guards, you got Ish Smith and Reggie Jackson on the Detroit side. Reggie's at 5,000, Ish is at 3,600. I don't really think either of them are worth looking at. The one point guard I would look at is Justice Winslow. 6,800 for Justice. He's giving you 40 a night over the last 3. Prior to that, he'd been a little bit more disappointing. I think he's probably more of a GPP guy, but there's clear 50-point upside here for Winslow. The Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark, and the new title holder of this.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
Yes, Langston Galloway, who put up 21 points last game at 3,500. I'm not really sure that we need to be paying too much attention to him. I like what Reggie Bullock's doing. 4,400, he's giving us some assists, which are helping to get that value. I think he's got a relatively safe floor here, while the fact that Josh Richardson is down at 5,900 should make him a more appealing target, and I'd be happy to use him, especially in tournaments, but even in cash, I think there's some value there. Dwayne Wade at 4,800. I think Wade's a tournament guy here, especially if Johnson does happen to miss this game. For the small forward guys, there's nothing much there. Derek Jones at 42, I've already mentioned him. For the big men is where it's at. 6,500 for Hassan Whiteside. A great opportunity here, I think, against a bigger opponent. He had 32 last game in 26 minutes. I think he can do that against Drummond. Drummond averages 62 points the last 3 times out against Whiteside in the Heat. So at 8,400, I like him. And Griffin at 8,700, another guy who should be at least pushing towards 50 points. So a ton of value in those guys. I think Bam is a fade, and I'm not really all that interested in Kelly Olynyk. And of course, I'm not interested in Zaza Pachulia either. On FanDuel, Drummond and Richardson look pretty good. I like Hassan over there as well. I think Ish Smith at 3,900 is maybe a weird upside tournament guy, but I'm not massively into that. And then you've got Reggie Jackson at 54, who has a little bit of GPP value as well. Over on FanDuel, the next game is the Memphis Grizzlies and the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are favored by 10.5 points. The total is 206 here. The Grizzlies are an absolute disaster at the moment, really struggling. Really struggling to do much at all in terms of get their play going. They got absolutely spanked by the old who was it that spanked them? The Bucks. That's right, in that third quarter in the last game. So that is it's not going well. We'll leave it at that. For Memphis, let's talk DraftKings value in this game. At point guard, Mike Conley's at $7,000. Now, he has done really well against Boston in the past, 45 the last 3 times, and that's a very good salary for Conley. He's been struggling a bit, but I like the value here, especially as a GPP guy. Kyrie at 9,000 is just giving us 50 a night, and that's fantastic. So he is in play as well against Memphis, despite the slow pace of this game. Shelvin Mack, Javon Carter. Carter at 3,500, I guess, has some appeal. He played 28 minutes last game, had 26 points in that time. And I have to wonder, though, how much of those extra minutes came because Justin Holiday did get into that early foul trouble. He could be a GPP option here, Javon Carter. Jaylen Brown's a fade. Justin Holiday at 38. I actually think Holiday at 3,800 is a tournament guy here. He's been piss poor since joining Memphis, no doubt about that. But I do think that I think last game he would have played 25 minutes, if not for the early foul trouble. He had a lot of steals in that game, 4 steals in the 17 minutes he played. I think he's absolutely worth looking at for GPPs. Garrett Temple, I wouldn't do that. Jason Tatum's at 6,200, probably a cash guy. Yeah, you're fairly confident in him being a cash player. Gordo Hayward, Marcus Morris, not really feeling either of those guys. While Omri Caspi at 3,700, massive minutes in each of the last 2 games. I think he's worth looking at as a 20-point floor type of guy in this scenario. I think he can get to that because he's playing so many minutes in the absence of Kyle Anderson. I think Caspi's worth a look. JaMychal Green at 5,300. Well, he's putting up big numbers, 32 average over the last 5, which is great at 53. I worry about the consistency of playing time with Jermichael, so I'd probably end up leaving him just for tournaments. Gasol's down at 6,800. He has done really well against Horford in the past. He's obviously struggling at the moment, but I think this is an opportunity to get him at a low price with a low roster percentage for him to really shine. Well, 6,000 for Al Horford. Well, he exceeded that last game pretty easily. I worry a little bit about the blowouts and the potential minutes here for Horford, so I'd probably be off him. While Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., he's down to 5,600, and that makes him an appealing tournament type of player to me. Let's go over onto FanDuel. Gasol and Jackson, I think, are worth looking at. I think Marcus Smart at 51 comes in pretty nicely on FanDuel as well. And Tatum at 6,500 has some value over there, no doubt about that. The next game we take a look at, the San Antonio Spurs and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Wolves are favored by 1 after getting their pants pulled down by Philadelphia last game. The total 225.5. No Tyus Jones in this one, so Derrick Rose could be forced into a little bit of extra action. So could Jeff Teague, of course.
My name is Jeff.
And that could open up some value for a bunch of those guys in that one. Let's take a look at point guards. Jeff Teague is at 5,900. I really like this for Teague. I think he should be pushing for more minutes. He hasn't been great of late, but without Jones there, he's going to be forced into doing more. While Derek White, the salary dropped by $200 because he only put up 17 points last game, but that was a foul-addled game from him, and I think he should be pushing back into high 20s, low 30s of value here. Bryn Forbes, Derrick Rose at 59. I'm interested in Rose at 59. I think there is some value in Derrick at that sort of a salary, so he's worth looking at. Pat Mills at 3,900. Strong game last time out. I don't trust it though. DeRozan is in a real slump. He's at 7,800. Is this the game to break him out of it? I don't know. It's been pretty prolonged, this slump from DeRozan, which is going under the radar a little bit. Maybe just for tournaments. Wiggins is only a tournament guy as well. Ballinelli at 38. He's giving us 20 a night at the moment. And at 3,800, give me 22, 23 a night. That's workable in cash. It's not going to be a tournament-winning scenario, and I'm not sure Ballinelli can be in a tournament-winning lineup. But for cash, there might be something there for him. For the wing, I got Josh Okogie as well, who I think we'll leave alone. Rudy Gay is at 5,200. While he's still dealing with this wrist thing, I'd fade him. Tolliver, Deng, Bertans, not for me. Townsy, 9,700. He got embarrassed by Embiid last game. I think a 50-pointer should be in Towns' immediate future, and by immediate future, I think on Friday. So I think that's a good spot to use him. Aldridge really struggled in the Spurs last game as well. So he has dropped down a phenomenal $700 down to 76. That is a great opportunity to go and use LaMarcus Aldridge, Taj and Dario and Pirtle. I don't really see the point in any of those guys here. On FanDuel, Teague I love at 6,200. Townsy at 10,900 is probably leaning a little bit more towards tournament, but there's still value. And Derek White at 59, I'm not sure I'd be all that keen on that. LaMarcus Aldridge came down 700 on FanDuel as well, but it's down to 8,200, so the appeal's not quite as high as it is on DraftKings. Still, I think we can use LaMarcus over on our FanDuel and feel relatively okay about it. Next up, the Cleveland Cavaliers take on the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are 15-point favorites, which is huge. The total is 214.5. Tristan Thompson has been ruled out for Cleveland, so there's some real value opening up there. Rudy Gobert is going to have an absolute field day on feasting. He's putting up huge numbers as it is, but on this lineup, he should be able to put up some really big numbers. At point guard, Colin Sexton, the Padawans at 4,500. He's struggling to get to that, so I'll leave him alone. Jordy Clarkson's at 53. Alec Burks against his former team at 48. I actually think Burks is a worthy GPP guy here. Daly probably not. And then Donnie Mitchell at 8,900. The ball's in his hands. He's averaging, his lowest score in his last 5 is 41. I think that he is pretty strong at that $8,900 price point. For the shooting guards, Jingle and Joe's down at 5,800. That would entice me to get back on Ingles. I think he's got a real chance to drop 30 in 30 minutes in this game. Kyle Korver, probably not. Rocket Rodney Hood is always a GPP guy, but if he's still under that minutes limit, I'd probably leave him alone. While Royce O'Neal has played 35-plus minutes in 3 of the last 4 games. He's at 4,300. He's not going to be for everybody, but I think there is some tournament upside there. Jay Crowder at 47 also, I think, is worth a tournament look, and Chetty Osman, I probably would leave him alone. For the big men, this is where it really is, because Ante Zizic is at 3,700. He had 32 points last game in 27 minutes. He should be looking for a similar load here.
Giggity.
I think he can beat this number pretty comfortably. I think he's almost a must roster guy in cash. I think he should be 80% rostered really, and he's got tournament appeal as well. Favors is at 53. I think he can be a cash play, maybe not for tournaments. While Gobert at 8,800, he's smashing that number as is, and now he gets one of the best matchups that he could possibly find with a Thompson-less, and maybe they're going to throw Channing Frye. God knows what they're going to do, but this is a huge opportunity for Gobert to put up some really, really strong numbers. On FanDuel, Zizic, O'Neal, I think Crowder's in play there, Ingles as well, and of course Gobert. But Gobert's up to 10,500. That's getting high, but I think the matchup favors that, as does the 9,000 for the Donovan Mitchell. Next up, the Golden State Warriors and the LA Clippers. The Warriors are 6-point favorites. The total is absolutely monstrous, 241.5, a huge spread. Huge. That's not. I wrote huge spread. I meant to write huge total. And Steph Curry absolutely on fire at the moment. DeMarcus Cousins will make his season debut for the Golden State Warriors. He will start. Kerr said he'll play him in like 4 to 5 minute stints. I wouldn't expect him to exceed 20 minutes in this game. At point guard, Steph's at 10,000. He should be able to get you 50 here as a relatively safe play, while Lou Williams at 6,700. I actually think what Lou is doing at the moment is relatively safe also. Gilgeous-Alexander, Ty Wallace, Livingston, Pat Beverly, I'm not interested in those guys. For the shooting guards, Clay's at 66. I think I would fade Klay Thompson with the return of Cousins, to be honest. I'm just not fully trusting Klay. Avery Bradley is an auto fade. Toby Harris is at 7,100. I think that is rock solid for cash. Really like Toby here. Durant at 10-1 is also really good for cash as per usual. The Rooster, Danilo Gallinari, has dropped all the way down to 6,700. A really poor last game has skewed his recent averages. I think a bounce back is clearly on the cards here for Gallinari. For the big men, the table, Montrezl Harrell, the salary is nice at 7,200. The matchup is okay. I do like him here. Your Repco, no. Draymond at 6,900.
Giggity!
Draymond's putting up some good numbers of late. His game is not predicated on usage. I still think that he's probably a little bit of a fade here, especially with a $500 price rise. I wouldn't be using Cousins at 5,500, although maybe he could come out and shock us. I wouldn't do it though. Looney and Gortat, also guys I'm not really all that keen on. On FanDuel, Lou Williams, Durant, Toby, Steph, all of those guys are cash and tournament worthy. Harrell's at 8,000. I think that might be pushing a little bit too much. And the 46 for DeMarcus Cousins. I think if you're making multiple tournament lineups, you throw him in one of them because it's a pretty appealing price for DeMarcus Cousins, even though it is his first game back and he will be limited almost, no doubt. The last game we take a look at, the New Orleans Pelicans traveling to take on the Portland Trail Blazers. The total here is 233.5. Yusuf Nurkic has been on fire. A great opportunity for him to try it out again against Anthony Davis. At point guard, Lillard's at 8,600. We know Drew Holiday locked him up in the playoffs, but in the regular season, Lillard's averaging 53 the last 3 times against the Pelicans. I like him here. CJ's at 63. I'm less enthused there, while Drew at 8,000. Absolutely rock solid. Drew Holiday getting 40 a night almost every night. Etuan Moore's not a good option to me. Evan Turner, Nick Stauskas, no. We've got Mo Harkless listed as questionable. I'm doubting that Harkless plays. At small forward, the Chief, Al-Farouq Aminu, who is now Mr. Consistency, apparently. 5,300. Don't mind that at that salary. I think there's value in Aminu there for cash, especially. Darius Miller, Mo Harkless, they're not going to work for me. And then for the big men, Nurkic at 82. Love what Nurkic is doing. Yeah, 40 points, a real huge possibility here. Mirotic, I love at 5,900 as well. Tone Davis at 11.7 is always strong. And Julius Randle at 75. I'd probably fade Randle away at that salary. Over on FanDuel, Nurkic and Mirotic come in strong. Davis is 13.8. That's big, but he's going to be a 65, 70 plus guy, and yeah, it's really hard to go past that. I think you can use that as long as you can work around it. I think CJ McCollum comes in a little bit more appealing on FanDuel as well. All right, let's have a look at some studs and values. The DraftKings stud is Vucevic, and the value play is Jingle and Joe Ingles. On FanDuel, the stud is Vooch as well, and the value play is Jeff Teague. On Yahoo, the stud is Vucevic, and the value play is Fournier. And on DraftStars, the stud is Griffin, and the value play is Jinglin Joe Ingles. Make sure you guys are checking out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network, and if you have a smart speaker, all you got to do is tell your smart speaker to play the podcast Locked On and insert the name there. Subscribe to this show, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on YouTube. Leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. You know the drill. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Victor Oladipo.